Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tech Leaders Hub, episode number 14. So glad to have you all with us here today. My guest today is Leigh Rathbone, Head of Quality Engineering and Gear for Music. Leigh, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thanks, Jacob. It's a clear blue sky where I am. So it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day for a podcast.
Ain't it justly exactly that. So I'm glad that you're enjoying one of those few days in the UK where you've got this clear sky. Right. Super great, and thank you for staying indoors for us and doing the live stream with us. Dear watchers and listeners, welcome to Tech Leaders Hub. Thank you so much for spending the time with us, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the replay. But if you are watching live, please let us know that you can see us, and even more importantly, that you can hear us. Leave a comment, say hi, and we'll get things rolling. We've got Leigh for a luxurious hour here, which I'm sure is gonna whiz right past us. And now, Leigh, people are going to be joining in for just a little while. We're going to give them just a couple minutes before we get into it. In the meantime, we've got the agenda for today. We've got the topic of what leaders get wrong about quality, in engineering. Who do you hope is tuning in then? Who do you think would benefit the most from listening to our conversation?
Everyone in tech, anybody involved in building software, any customer, any product owner, anybody who works in a team that receives software from a tech team. I'm hoping the topics we cover, I'm hoping that anybody involved in tech would find it interesting. And those that work in departments like finance, marketing, contact centers, they receive software that we build for them. So I'm hoping in some way, because I will be talking about the end customer and the people that use our software, I'm actually hoping they'll find it useful as well.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I don't think you're underselling this here at all. I do think this will be relevant, just like you said. And well, give me a moment, because people are saying hi in the comments. Eddie Fisher is saying, beautiful day to listen to a podcast. Well, I do hope that is very much the case for you. Eddie, Amy is saying, hey, Amy. A name I'm going to butcher, but I'm going to try anyway. Siddharth is saying hi, Jakob, hi, Leigh. And then we've got a bunch of waving emojis from a LinkedIn user. Sorry, this happens sometimes. I do believe that might be Sam White from Gear for Music. If it is, hi, Sam. Jamie Pollard is waving. Paulina Gatkowska, that's from STX Next, is saying hi. Richard Smith is here with a wave emoji, and Michael Cross breaking the mold with a cowboy hat emoji. All right, thank you, everyone, for attending Tech Leaders Hub today. What a great turnout. I love that already. So, since we have people here already, we can very much get right into it. And the way I like to do this is to bring value up front. Some podcasts take a little while to get going and to get to the point. And we are going to talk a little bit about your background for the people who don't know you, what you're about, what you've done in the past, which I know a little bit about and I'm very excited about. But before all that, this is Tech Leaders Hub, and we want to share what tech leaders need to know to succeed and excel at their jobs. So the question that I ask all of my guests at the very beginning is, what is your number one tip for tech leaders?
This, I think, is one of the hardest questions I've ever been asked, honestly, Jacob. I've been thinking about it, and I thought, should I go with adopt the servant leader mindset? And then I thought, no, I'm not going to give that one as a tip. And then I thought, how about asking tech leaders to be more like Ted Lasso? Now, I know everyone that works for Gear for Music now is laughing their heads off, because I do talk about Ted Lasso quite a lot. I think he's a great leader. So would that be my tip? And then I thought, no, let's go with this one. Let's go with the following one. See what I've done there? I've already given 2 tips, but this is my real one. Stop following the trends set by the big boys over in Silicon Valley. Stop following the trends that may not be right for your company, your context, your people, the history of your company, the tech stack of your company. I've seen too many times companies follow the Googles, the Facebooks, the Spotifys, because they're big and trendy and seen as the flashy toys. My advice to tech leaders is do what's right for your people. You can always take inspiration from those big leaders, but set your own vision. You know, don't just follow for following's sake. That's my tip.
Excellent. Yeah, I really love that tip, and I think it's really relevant. What I like to do is let's dig in just a little bit deeper into that. Okay, so if I'm deciding not to follow the trends, if I'm deciding to set my own vision, what do you think should inform that vision? Practically speaking, what questions should I be asking to build that vision and to build my own trends to follow?
So I think it's looking at your current tech stack and the changes you want to make and why. And I think starting with why is really, really important when you're starting to build your vision. I think working closely with your customers and understanding where they want to go and where the value add is from your customers, your stakeholders, that should always build into your vision. Listen to your people and what they want to do and where they want to grow and do self-development. That should build into your vision. But what puts you on the front foot? So I'll give you a famous quote, Jacob, and I'll give you a prize. I'll give anybody that's watching or listening a prize as to who said this quote. In order to just stand still, you've got to keep moving at pace. Now, the continuous improvement mindset surely has to be in everyone's vision, because if you're not, your tech's going to die. And I'll give everybody a couple of seconds to see. They're probably all trying to Google it. You won't find it through Google. They're all busy typing away now. I'm going to Google that quote. You won't find it, folks. In fact, I'm going to give you the answer. The answer was Martin O'Neill. The Aston Villa manager in 2009 said, in order to just stand still, you've got to keep moving at pace. And that pace, if you're not doing continuous improvements, if you're not doing self-development and driving that and working with your customer, you're going to fall behind, I'm afraid.
Excellent. Wow. I have heard of that quote. I would not be able to attribute it, but honestly, whatever quote I end up hearing about or even using, I'm usually not great about attributing. And listeners of Tech Leaders Hub know that, because I've a few times now I mentioned a quote and I'm like, I can't attribute this, but here's something smart that a smart person said at some point. Speaking of smart people, I love the interaction in the comments. Shay is saying, hey, people are taking the time out of their day to leave these comments.
Yeah.
I want to feature them. Aiden is raising his hands. Hi. Łukasz Sagan is saying hi. Chris Salas is both excited to hear more about this topic and really excited about Ted Lasso, it seems. Michael Cross is saying, also love Ted. Series was a surprise for me. I can barely keep up with them. Shay is saying, stop following the trends. Team context is key. Yeah. And then he is all right. This is a little bit of a conversation about Ted Lasso already happening in the comments. We're not even 10 minutes in, everyone.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. Great to see you back on stage. It's like you have a fan following here.
Not sure about that.
Yeah. Oh, and another twist on the quote: to keep static in the stream, you still have to row. I like that. It's
I like that one. Shay's a smart guy.
Even more poetic. All right. So it seems like some of the people on this stream already know you, but there certainly are certain people here who have not heard your story thus far. So I wanted to ask, before we delve into the agenda for today, and since we have already mentioned something that the watchers and listeners can kind of think about in terms of not following the big players, can you give us a kind of Cliff's Notes version of your story thus far? You're, head of quality engineering right now at Gear 4 Music. How did you end up here, and what are the highlights along the way?
Wow. 1998, I was working at what's called a Greyhound track. Try and keep a straight face, folks. What a Greyhound track, for those that don't live in Britain or the USA, it's a track where greyhounds run round and there's a winner and there's a lot of gambling and drinking involved. So I was managing at a Greyhound track and I wasn't too happy. Very, very stressful. I was 26 years of age and I spun a coin. And it was tails I leave and heads I stay. And it landed on tails. So I left there and then with no job to go to. Hadn't used a computer before. Fell into testing. Now, I think most people can probably associate with that. Very few people leave university with the ambition of being a professional software tester. But I fell into testing. It was Y2K that sucked me in 1998. So Y2K, I'm going to be controversial here. it created this this thing that we need huge teams of testers, right? Because what happened in Y2K, companies went and recruited loads of testers to go through the code and find all the defects, so planes didn't fall out of the sky and cache points didn't spew out all the cache on that New Year's Eve of 1999. And what happened was those testers found defects. So all the leaders, tech leaders, went, this is brilliant. We now need more testers, right? So that's what sucked me in. Those next 4 years, from 1998 to 2002, I moved role every year. And the reason for that was I wanted to upskill really, really quick. But then I found what I call my first home, which was Sony Ericsson. And I worked on the world's first touchscreen smartphone, as modeled by Leigh Rathbone on this call. This phone is 20 years old and it still works. So I spent 7 years at Sony Ericsson. I also worked on the world's first smartwatch, 2005. You think these things are new? They're not. This 2005, 17 years old, my friends. So Sony Ericsson, 7 years. I then went to a really interesting company called Sony PlayStation. See what I'm doing here, Jacob? Can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah, definitely.
So at PlayStation, I was head of European test operations, a really big role with about 300 testers, a huge operation at the time, where you could maybe shoot somebody on a screen in a game. I then went to clinical software, where you could actually kill somebody if the software was wrong. So the context, Shay's mentioned context before. Context is absolutely king for quality, because the context of a game where you're shooting somebody on a screen is going to be very, very different to the context of a bit of software that distributes prescriptions that can then kill somebody if they're wrong. So context was king, and that was probably my biggest lesson at that point. Context is king. I then moved through, I went to work at an online bank. I then ended up at another home called The Very Group. I spent 5 years there. If you've not heard of The Very Group, they are an online retail company in the UK. So I spent 5 fabulous there in a leadership role, test leadership role. Since then, I've now ended up at Gear 4 Music, where I'm head of quality engineering. I've been with the company 4 and a bit months, absolutely loving it. 24 years in tech, loving every second. As passionate today about this role and this industry and this craft I'm in as I was that very first day I entered it, where I went, wow, this feels special. And I'm very, very lucky to have landed in a craft that I love and loves me. It's given me so much in life. I've traveled the world, I've met some great people, and I hope I've landed some good change and left some good impressions with people. But I love this craft and I love being in tech.
And now, on top of all of that, you're on Tech Leaders Hub.
Yes! I've made it. I can retire. I've made it.
You made it, Leigh. No, seriously. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's like whenever you finish one of your thoughts, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna let that sink in. That was great, and thank you for sharing some of that experience. Got some additional comments coming in. Just going to feature them really quickly. Shay is saying bingo. Leigh shows the phone. Is this not the first time you did this on a stream, Leigh?
I've shown this phone at many conferences. It's traveled the world with me.
Yeah. Thomas is saying something about the P800 or P900. I'm not sure.
This is the P800. So this is the phone that changed the world. It was the first touchscreen color smartphone. People think the iPhone was. It wasn't. The iPhone came some 5 years after this.
Yeah.
It's true.
Eddie's saying he's still partial to a Casio calculator watch. I remember those.
I remember those.
So.
They're dead trendy now. They're dead trendy.
Are they? Oh,
yeah.
I haven't heard. Sam White, I believe. Yeah, that's Sam White again saying that you go around various companies stealing merchant assets. Care to comment on that?
Absolutely correct. Who doesn't? Who doesn't steal merch from the companies they work at? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. And some additional conversation in the comments. It's getting pretty dense in there, I will have to say. So if I don't feature yours, I'll be very sorry, but I'm trying to just keep up with everything and also to do the podcast, in the meantime. So thanks everyone for being with us and for the lively conversation. Keep it going. In the meantime, let's get into the subject at hand, and let's talk about quality and hopefully share something that tech leaders can take away and use, put on their to-do list, have a meeting about, or maybe not have a meeting, but have some async communication about, in their jobs. So what I wanted to start with is a little bit about your role, Leigh. Because you're head of quality engineering. Personally, I have not very often seen people with that kind of role. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit about, what does the role entail? Are there any metrics that you own? What does the day-to-day look like? What is your team like? If you could kind of flesh that out for our audience, what that usually entails, or maybe, uniquely entails in your case.
Well, I think when I was interviewed at Gear for Music, I was very insistent on the wording of the title. So I think the common term that people might understand is head of QA. I'm very keen to move away from that QA term and move to a term which is quality engineering. So I thought if I come in with that title, first of all, that job title, first of all, that sets the tone, that allows me to make the change. And I've changed the title of the QAs to quality engineers. But coming in with that title specifically was planned. It wasn't by accident. So I've come in 4 months into the role. The role really is multi-layered, and that won't come as a surprise to anyone. Because it's not head of QA and it's head of quality engineering, it gives me a very wide berth. It gives me a very wide remit as to what I can go after. So it's, first of all, changing the mindset about who owns quality. So I think lots of companies and lots of tech leaders fall into the trap that QAs, testers, QEs, whatever term anybody uses in their own context, they own quality. They're the gatekeepers. They're the people that say yes or no. And that's, that's all right. That's where companies are. But coming in with my title of quality engineering, one of my main roles and goals is to change that mindset in Gear for Music. And I'm glad to say I'm pushing on open doors. I'm glad to say that, first step was to change the QAs to QEs, quality engineers, that stands for. That was one step. And that changes the mindset within the whole company about the people that do that role. All of a sudden, they're not QAs, they're engineers. Yeah. And that's really important, isn't it, Jacob? Because the modern tester, the modern QA, the modern QE, they're no longer just the people that sit at the UI. The modern testers have this metaphorical toolbox they carry around with themselves. And there's many tools, traits, behaviors in that toolbox. Automation, exploratory testing, pairing. There's lots and lots. If you open a QE's toolbox, they're an engineer. So why wouldn't we call them engineers? So one of my main goals is change the mindset around who owns quality. Quality is owned by the team. The QE plays a massive, massive role in that. They wear a coaching hat. They wear a doing hat. They wear a pairing hat. They pair with the BAs, the devs, the customer. Let's talk about the customer. We don't talk enough, tech leaders, about our customers. So that's one part of the role. The other part of the role is to then work with the engineering leads and the squads and see what their processes are, see how they're going about, the devs doing some testing, the BAs doing some testing, how we're baking quality into the whole process, not just leaving everything to the end. And the other part of my role is there's a team called product support, and they look after defects that come in from live. Now, here's something I want to challenge everybody in this podcast to, and anybody listening to it. If you're in a leadership role for quality, surely that team that is usually engineers, it's not usually QAs, but it's usually engineers that look after those defects that come in from live, surely you want a big say on that team. Because they're the ones, surely they're a great indicator as to the quality the squads are releasing. Because if you're getting a load of defects coming into that team, usually they're on the side. Usually they're out of harm's way. They're out of everybody's vision. They're just fixing live defects on the side. No, that's not right. They need to be main players. So I look after that team as well, because that gives me a really good insight as to what quality we're actually putting into live. Because if there's an avalanche of defects coming in from live, we've got something majorly wrong. That's sort of another part of the role. And my last part of the role, and I will speed up now, Jacob, sorry, is to bring the customers into our quality journey. So engaging, what I mean by customers are the people in our main office, our head office, that use our software that we create for them. They're our customers. So my aim is to get them involved and be radical and get them testing, get them looking at user stories, giving us feedback loops. These people are cool. They're our customers. They've got lots of great thoughts. And you might unearth your next tester by engaging them. How cool would that be?
I see. Wow. Okay. Well, that's a pretty, I would say, wide berth of what you're kind of involved in terms of being the head of quality engineering. I do have follow-up questions, just a few comments in the meantime. Thomas is saying, and I wonder how you would address this, quality is everybody's responsibility, but maybe QA testers or QEs should be accountable. What would you say?
I would say the whole team is accountable. So I'll give you an example. Let's go back to the clinical software. Right, so if it's not team owned, if the team isn't accountable, and by team, I also mean the product owner, by the way, because they're the end customer. The product owner is the one that goes, yeah, we'll take that into live. If the whole team isn't accountable for that clinical software, and let's just say someone does die with the software release we've released in that clinical software company, are you telling me it's fair to put all that pressure onto one person? I don't know about everybody else on the call, but I'm not sure my mental well-being would cope with that. I don't think it's fair to put all that on one person's shoulders. The QE is a main driver, or QA or tester. I'll stay with QE just for this talk.
Sure.
The QE is the main driver. They've got a lot to say about quality. They're a quality coach. They're a quality advocate. They're doing testing, but so are the devs. And surely at the end of each sprint, the team are doing testing as a collective. So why put all that accountability onto one person? And a question to everybody, I'd love everybody to comment on this. Does that sound fair? I'd love people to leave a comment as to whether they think it's fair. But Thomas, it's a fantastic question. And I think it's one that, this is my view, but that doesn't mean it's right at all. It's just my view.
Yeah, exactly. And by all means, dear watchers and listeners, you got comments? Leave them with us. Speaking of which, Chris is saying something about the diversity of the tool set that you mentioned, the toolbox, API. Does DB stand for database here, or am I making a fool out of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Security, load, testing. Yeah, testers are remarkably diverse. Not exactly a question, but just something I wanted to highlight.
Can I pull something from that? Because it's a great point,
of course,
Chris. So this is a key point. So if we go back, and anybody that was unlucky enough to work in Waterfall, all those things there that he's raised would have been separate teams or separate individuals that had separate skills, even in a test department. Now in Agile, what we've done is we've broken up all those siloed test teams, and then a tester drops into a squad, and there could be a perception from the squad that tester can do everything that Chris has listed there. Well, guess what? I've not met a tester on this planet that is an expert in testing, because testing is very wide and it's very deep. All those things there's loads more you could put on there. What we do want testers to do, though, is understand what those things that Chris has listed there, what they are, what testability means. There's far, far more, by the way, that Chris could have listed, and I know he could have. But we want testers to understand and become T-shaped. So the T-shape is that. So we want testers here to have that wide understanding of what testing is, and all, not just does it work, but is it performance? Is it secure? Does it scale? How much does it cost? And then the T bit is where you get special in one of those things. It's where you become a specialist. So it's T, or if you want to go extreme, you could say pie-shaped. And if you think about the numerical symbol of pi, it's where you got two verticals and one horizontal. Yeah. So this is really important, because I think there's a lot of expectations on testers that, oh yeah, the tester knows everything, especially if the quality isn't owned by the team. The devs, the delivery manager, the BA thinks the tester can do everything Chris listed there. I think that's really unfair.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for addressing that. And while you were talking, I think you can see that too. We're getting many more comments. So let's try and pull up some to discuss here. And by the way, some of these are comments in the sense of they are not questions. If you have questions we can answer it, just go ahead and do that. But anyway, a comment about accountability then. Drew says, it starts from the top when it comes to who is accountable. The thought did cross my mind. So how do you kind of marry that with the thought that the team is accountable, I should say?
No, that's a great point. I think everyone has a part to play with quality, don't they? So the customer. So when we create software, it's not for us, it's for the customer. So the customer should own that software. Now, what that means in my world is when they own that software, they've got to be accountable and responsible. And what that means in my world is they release people from their teams to come and help us define what quality looks like, to help us with usability, to get involved with the story writing. I said this earlier, the actual hands-on testing. At the online bank, I went to the stakeholders, the key people, the top people in the bank, and I said, I want you to release people to be in our sprints. I want them to come for the last 2 days and do proper hands-on testing, get in there. I said, it'd be great if you could release them to come to the stand-ups and be seen as part of the team. The challenge here is there's a cost with that, isn't it? Because you're taking 2 people off the floor that should be answering phone calls or should be working in finance or marketing. But you know what they did? They said, you know what, Leigh, you can have them full time because this is so important now. That is accountability. That was tremendous.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was a hard sell to get these customers involved in testing, but it sounds like it worked out better than expected.
I think, again, context is king, isn't it, Jacob? I think every company, I can't comment for companies like TruePill or Payrock or X-Ray or Arrow Excel. The reason I list those companies is because I know people on this call work for those companies. I can't comment on how hard that's going to be for them because I don't know their history, their context, their culture, their leaders. I can only comment on the world I'm in, and the door I'm pushing on Gear for Music is very open. The leaders now understand, and they're understanding that they need to be involved and be part of this, and it's not just a tech thing.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for adding that. So again, the discussion is very lively. I'm gonna be a little bit selective here, but there's a comment by Shay that I wanted to highlight. He's saying quality is everyone's responsibility. Everyone in the company care about onboarding, offboarding, development, testing, release, post-release, all of it. Your take?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I think myself and Shay have very, very similar outlooks on quality testing. I think that's a spot-on comment. I really do. I love the onboarding. I love that point in the offboarding. People forget about that. Spot on.
Exactly. All right. So thank you, Shay, for leaving that comment. Yeah. Now, Thomas is continuing a thread from earlier saying, if everybody is accountable for quality, though, the strategy could stuck because everybody may have a strong opinion what tools to use and what tests we should have. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think there's a balance to be had. What we're trying to do at Gear for Music is say to the squads, look, and this might sound familiar with some people, previous companies I've worked at, developers will just throw the software to the tester and go, well, you're the tester. Or when a ticket gets into a column that says in test, they go, well, that must be with the tester. I think what I'm trying to do at Gear for Music is think big, but start small, start now. And the start small, start now looks like asking devs to make sure that the quality of code that leaves their machine is as good as it can be. And that's through unit checks, pairing with testers, pairing with other devs, peer reviews, all those kind of things. But I think it's a really good point Thomas raises. It's almost too much of a committee trying to make a decision, isn't it? I think it's getting the right people in to represent the right parts of the company that can have that say. So get the right people from the business say, I represent the business. They've empowered me to say whether this is the right solution or the wrong solution. So by picking the right people, empowering them, you can unblock slightly what Thomas is talking about there. It'd be interesting if I could have a chat with Thomas offline to understand more about that point. It's only, 25 words, something like that. It's quite hard to get the full context.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, you can find each other on LinkedIn, and I would love to be kind of the catalyst of that conversation. Now,
Thomas is a cool cat, by the way. I know Thomas is a cool cat.
okay, awesome. Now, Amy left a comment here about coaching, and I'm really glad, Amy, for your comment, especially because I did want to ask about that. So the comment is not exactly a question, but I'm going to read it anyway. QEs can be quality coaches within their team, raising awareness and promoting the quality mindset throughout. So my question related to that would be, how exactly does that happen? There might be, QEs or people who want to be QEs on this call right now thinking, okay, I want to be coaching, I want to be this quality coach, I want to promote that mindset, but practically speaking, how do I start doing that?
Okay, so first of all, it's not easy. If anybody tells you that breeding this team quality is a team-owned thing, if they say it's easy, they haven't gone through it and they haven't got the battle scars. With Amy's point there, how, and your question, Jacob, there's many different approaches and things you can do. One, the best approach I've always used, my previous company was 20 devs, one CTO and me, right? So 20 devs and me. And what I did there was I paired, because pairing is sharing and sharing is caring. And I know everybody that works at Gear for Music now is absolutely laughing their heads off, because that's one of my sayings. But by pairing, you get to understand. And when you start to understand people's, how they work, you can ask questions. And let's face it, QA stands for question asker. QEs, testers, QAs should all be really, really good question askers. And my point would be, ask those questions. That's always the best start. Show me your unit tests. Show me how you've owned the quality. Show me what a peer review looks like. People who use Agile will also be aware of something called 3 amigos, right? 3 amigos, really, really important. 3 amigos takes place before any line of code is written. And it should be a conversation to get shared understanding as to how the ticket, the story, the epic, the program is going to get built, and how we're going to test it, how we're going to deliver it, who's going to do what, and you get that shared understanding. And I think from a coaching perspective, do you know the history of the word coach? I heard it on one of the Testing Peers podcast the other day. It came from an American university, and it comes from the horse-drawn days where you had a horse and a coach being pulled, and the horse carries somebody from A to B, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think about Amy's question here, our aim is to carry the team and enable them and to think differently. So tomorrow at Gear for Music, we have an exploratory test session with one of the squads where everybody, the devs, the BA, the delivery manager, the QEs, turn up with a different device, different browser. They're given a charter, which is like a little sort of scenario. And collectively, we're all going to go off, do our little exploration, come back, see what we found. That's coaching. That's getting the software from A to B. That's carrying people along the journey. So I could spend a full day answering this question, but for me to summarize, it would be brave, take risks, go and pair with everybody in your squad so you understand what quality checks are happening at what point so far. And then you can start asking the questions about, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? I'll give you an example. On the previous company, we had an automation suite and it was very UI based. And I just said, why are we doing this at the UI? This is nonsense. Why don't we pair and build this automation suite within Postman? And the penny dropped. They were like, oh, we thought UI automation had to happen at UI. We thought that was the only place we could automate. But now you've said it, like, it's so obvious. And these were devs, where they're most likely to feel happier in Postman rather than automating at the UI. But they had this perception that, the right thing to do was automate at the UI, and it was wrong. But they were brilliant, and we paired and we learned. So I think to answer your question, Amy's point, that's what I'd say.
Okay, excellent. One follow-up, and again, comments are coming in. I'll try to get to as many as I can. Amy, in the meantime, said bingo, by the way, so I suppose that answer tracks.
Can I explain that?
Sure.
So every company I've gone to, Sony Ericsson, the Very Group, and now Gear for Music, they have a bingo card of my favourite sayings.
Are you serious?
Yeah, seriously. So when I'm in a meeting, they'll say bingo. Now, this is not dissimilar to Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso, if anybody watches the box set, Ted Lasso is one of the best coaches on the planet. He has catchphrases because that's how you land messages. Martin Luther King, when he made that speech, I had a dream, he repeats it 8 times. That was his catchphrase. That's what everyone remembers about Martin Luther King, not just the speech, but his whole movement and how he changed people's lives. But he had catchphrases. So, one part of being a leader is how do you land messages? And it's by repeating messages and they become catchphrases. So I'm actually quite happy that our people at Gear for Music have this bingo card with my sayings on.
Okay, but can I get that after the show, though? I want to check it myself. Definitely. I would love to have that. And okay, wow, I love the story behind that. So also, one mind-boggling thing for me related to what you've been saying about Ted Lasso. Do you know that we don't have that many episodes of Tech Leaders Hub yet. I think we're just crossing the 20 episode mark. And already Ted Lasso was mentioned twice, on 2 different episodes. Then the other one, I believe, was the one with Junior Godoy from Scurry. Go check that out. But not now. Stay with us now if you're watching live. And to your point about I have a dream and repeating the same point, there's a saying in marketing that I think applies here is that when you are sick of saying it, that's when they are starting to hear it. It's really been on my mind recently.
Yeah. And actually, myself and Amy had a conversation yesterday about how do you make change stick, which is one of the hardest things for leaders. And this thing about changing, sorry, Amy works at Gear for Music, by the way, in case people didn't realise. One of the hardest things as a tech leader is when you want to do something like this, where you're changing the mindset around quality and you're asking people to do things that they might not have done before. It's very, very hard to make things stick. Because when people come up against time pressures and deadlines, they revert back to their old ways of working. So, I've seen this at every company I've gone through. Myself and Amy were just having a discussion yesterday about, well, how do we make things stick? And one way is catchphrases. I know it sounds daft. And what you've just said there, we're just going to no one's going to knock us down. We're just going to keep going, man, with this message and this vision that we've got.
Yeah. And also, in terms of repetition, one thing that I heard you mention quite a few times thus far, and I think that I'm also personally curious about, is pairing. So I will try to get to the comments, kind of in the comments section in just a second. But just out of my own curiosity for a second here, what would you say to people who look at pairing and all they see is basically inefficiency? All they see is 2 people looking at the same task when they could be working in parallel on different tasks, and on paper, it seems like a more efficient use of resources. So what would you say as a counter argument to that?
2016, the Amazon Echo was launched. I bought that Amazon Echo on the day it launched in Britain because I wanted to know about voice activation. I'd worked on voice activation on this phone. Now I was interested to see what the Amazon Echo was all about. So then after using the Amazon Echo for about 4 months, I got really curious. And we've got Aidan Walters on the audience here, and he'll be able to back me up with this. I got curious around Amazon Echo. So I thought I'll build myself an Amazon Echo skill. That's what I'll do. So I went into Amazon Alexa Developer Toolkit. I watched a few videos, watched a few blogs, and I was like, I can do this. And guess what? I got stuck, well and truly stuck. And I spent about 3 days being stuck. Now, is that a good amount of time? Is that efficient, being stuck for 3 days? Probably not. So I came out of the cave and went, hallelujah, I need to pair. So I paired with someone else that was curious about building Alexa skill. And we got so far. We got over the hurdle, but we got stuck again. So guess what we did next? We went to the next stage of pairing called mobbing. And if anybody doesn't know what mobbing is, it's one screen, one keyboard, one mouse, and you put the code up on the big screen, and you get probably 5 or 6 people in a room. And together, collectively, you nail problems. So mobbing speeded us up even quicker because we had 6 minds instead of 1. And we built that Alexa skill within 2 hours. We finished it off within 2 hours. And having built an Alexa skill, guess what? As a QA, I now know how to test an Alexa skill. So that's a key message for all QEs on this call. Understand the technology. But going back to your points, let's say devs pair. Well, there goes your peer review. You don't need to do a peer review. You've taken it away. It's already happened. The sharing of knowledge between each devs means that actually when they go back to working individually, and I'm not a great believer in pairing 100% of the time, when they go back and work individually, they've learned something from the other dev, which again makes them quicker. There's eyes on quality. So how many times as a tester, as a QA have we received a build and there's memory leaks? All because a developer hasn't finished off the sentence properly. Okay, pairing stops that. So you're building quality in from the very beginning. I know leaders say, I don't want to see 2 people building 1 line of code, but it's a real story you've got to sell, and you've got to sell the benefits and put money behind it. That's how you win leaders over, the CEOs, the CTOs. You put money behind what it's saved. That would be my answer to that one, Jacob.
Right. Yeah. So I suppose in my mind, I would summarize it as, okay, you take 2 people times 1 hour, working on a feature together by pairing, but that can save you 3 hours, 6 hours of, fixing any issues that might pop up later. Yeah, I see that. And probably out of the scope of this conversation, but something that's been popping in my mind more and more is whether pairing is not more applicable, but even applicable, possibly applicable to domains outside of programming. I've been meaning to maybe explore that,
Okay, so there's a famous sitcom in the UK called Blackadder, and the first series was written by a writer. The second series was pair writing. 2 writers sat down together and they pair wrote the series. It's only 6 episodes. The series 2 was only 6 episodes, and it was funnier. They got it out quicker. So there is this thing about pairing. So go back to when you were a kid, Jacob. Think back to when you were 5 or 6 and you went to school. Didn't your teacher say to you many times, turn around to the person next to you and work on this thing?
True.
Yeah. But then when we go to secondary school or high school, depending on what language we use, that's beaten out of us. This pairing together that we learn to infant and junior school, all of a sudden it's do that by yourself. Stop talking, stop pairing. And that's carried on into the work environment for years and years. We need to reverse it. Pairing.
Yeah, because when you think about it, after that stage, when it's, just look at your paper and only at your paper, you go into the world of, of business, of delivering products, and nobody cares if you created a feature, individually, just, by your own, or whether it was a team effort. Everybody just cares if it's quality. And I think, we've already made great points towards why quality can stem from pairing. So thanks for expanding on that. Right. I wanted to highlight one comment by Nexter, Maciej Urbański. He's, I think, basically agreeing with some of our previous points, but I really love the comment, so let's read it out. Putting QA as the one being held accountable for quality, while developers are accountable for the amount of new features delivered, creates an unhealthy we versus them mentality, instead of that being a part of a team with a common goal. Are we going to say yep to that?
Absolutely, 100%, yeah.
Okay. So thanks, Maciej, for the comment. Everybody from STX Next watching, shout out to you. Everybody else, shout out to you as well. Thanks for watching. Stay with us. And now, Chris has come in with a question about unit testing. So I wonder what you would say. In your opinion, Leigh, should testers ever be in charge of unit testing? I hear this a lot in my conversations, and I can't say I agree.
So I did see this crop up, and I did start to think about it before you asked, Jacob. I would say, why would you nail it to one person or one craft? Again, I think devs are best placed to unit test. Obviously, they write the code. They're the most skilled. I'm a great believer in the right person with the right skills doing the right testing. What I do believe in here, I'd love to understand what the word in charge actually means in this question. I don't understand what in charge means. Does that mean that you give the green flag for it to continue once you've inspected it? This still goes back to pairing. I think as a coach, you want to see that it's being done. You want to understand what's been done at unit level, because it might impact what you do at API or at the UI, and you don't want to duplicate. So for me, I would lose the bit that says in charge, and I would say, should testers collaborate with unit testing all day long? 100%. And if you're not, don't worry if you can't read code, right? Don't worry if you can't write code. If you're a good question asker, and if you're working with some good devs, they should be able to explain what the unit test is trying to achieve. And just using the language, show me. Can you show me what you've covered? Can you show me? It's very unoffensive, and it's a collaborative question. Can you show me how you've done that? I'm new to like reading code, learning code. I want to upskill. I want to think about maybe going on to a few courses where I'm going to write some code and learn some languages. Would you mind just showing me how unit tests work? So I would change that and say testers should collaborate for unit testing.
Okay, thank you for addressing that. Chris, hope that answers your question as well. All right. Some additional comments coming in. Chris is expanding on his point, so let's continue the thread. In charge of, I mean, at the very least, oversees the unit testing. I have had a lot of conversations where dev doesn't do anything in regards to unit testing. It gets handed off to the QE team.
Yeah, so it goes back to what I said earlier about this throwing it over the wall, which was right in waterfall. I still see it in Agile, by the way. Chris is spot on. We should not be just handing off from one craft to another. And one of the biggest things I've seen Agile teams do that breeds this is have a column that is called with QA, with QE, with tester. Why on earth would you have a column named after a person? It's breeding this, let's throw the bit of code, the ticket over to them. He's absolutely right here. I wouldn't say oversee. I would still use the word collaborate. I think oversee sounds a little bit like, I don't know, one Darth Maul from Star Wars or something. I oversee. You know what I mean? I think the language here is, we should be collaborating and asking questions about unit testing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that answer. Now, there was one thread that came up a few times already in what you were talking about that I wanted to kind of expand on. And I have a comment kind of as a prompt here. Eddie Fisher is saying, one of my former, said just a second ago or a few minutes ago, one of my former colleagues used to refer to himself as head question asker. This is back to the, QA as question asker. So what I'm curious about, because I really want to get, actionable things I can steal or the listeners can steal to their own workflows. It sounds to me like the QE, I should say, quality engineer, aside from the toolbox of actual tools and, programs that they are using, they also need to have like a separate toolbox of questions. That's how I kind of feel about what you were talking about. And I wonder if you could highlight any particular questions other than, could you show me how this works, which you just mentioned, that, are particularly useful, open up, fruitful conversations, anything that in your opinion and in your experience has worked?
Okay, so I'll keep this one dead simple. First of all, myself and Amy are working on killer questions to ask for our projects and our teams here at Gear for Music. So that's one thing to state. But I think this can be answered by anybody going to the Agile testing quadrants diagram that was created by Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory. And if anybody who's online can post a link into the chat so people can go and see it. Because for me, that Agile testing Agile quadrants, all you have to do is ask questions around each quadrant. The first quadrant is about unit tests. So this is a graphic, by the way. And it's very simple for testers just to pull it up on a screen and use it to ask the question. So the first quadrant deals with unit checks. So you can say to your dev straight away, can you show me what unit checks you plan to do? Or can you actually tell me what unit tests are? Because I've seen that as a question in the chat here. So you can base your questions on that quadrant. The next one is about functionally, does it work? So that's a conversation with the dev again. What are you doing to make sure it functionally works? This is what I plan to do. And I like to see a playback between a dev and a QE as to who's doing what, not just one way. I'm not asking for devs to do all this show me, and not have it the other way. I'm trying to encourage QEs at Gear for Music to do this playback as to, yeah, from a functional perspective, this is what I'm planning to test. Because then the dev can say, or the team of devs can go, whoa, you've missed a huge risk here that we knew about, but we never surfaced, but just by having this conversation. So the second quadrant is all about functional testing. The third quadrant in the agile testing quadrant is all about the exploratory and usability. So where's our customer in this journey? Who's representing the customer in this story? Who do we need to show in order to gain some insight as to whether this is a good user journey or not? How does this impact the user? The last quadrant I love, it's all about performance and security. Simple questions. How do we know this is going to perform against our load peak? How do we know this story is secure? So can I just go into the performance one as an example?
Yes, by all means.
Some companies do performance testing just before they go into peak. So for ecom teams, that'll be round about September, and they'll spin up an instance, they'll spin up an environment to go, hey, we'll do some load testing now. One of the best companies I've ever worked at for performance testing was the Very Group, because they did it all the time, and it was embedded in the squads. And the squads, every story had that question: how do we know this performs? How do we know it's going to cope with our load peak in our peak season? So straight away, by asking the question, how do we know this is going to perform? If somebody says, well, that's up for the performance test in 8 months' time. Whoa, I'm sorry, that's not an acceptable answer anymore. And the same with security. How do we know this is secure? Oh, that's for the pen testers to do. We get them in once a year. No, not good enough in this day and age. With the way the platform, the clouds are, with all the open source tooling there is, with all the pipelines, with all the infrastructure now, there is no reason not to be doing those tests early on with devs embedding them into the pipelines with the help of the QE. So those simple questions that you can pull out of that agile testing quadrants would be the very first thing I'd recommend people go to.
Right, and I suppose it also shows the area of growth for people who think, they have already learned quite a bit in a QE role, but have you thought about these additional kinds of testing, like security testing, that you could also be doing, right?
You've fallen into my trap, Jacob. And by the
way,
you have. And by the way, that's another bingo saying. So the guys, the folks at Gear for Music, we're ticking that one off. So we've created something called Quality Champions. So we realize at the moment we're a fantastic team in saying, does this work? And we're great at exploratory and automation. However, we're creating quality champions within the QE community where people are curious about something and they want to go off and learn about performance, security, usability, accessibility, scalability, all these abilities. So we're creating quality champions and we're giving them time to go off and explore. And we're giving them time to come back and demo and show us what they've found. So our 2 performance quality engineers yesterday did a playback to the QE community about the performance tool that they're exploring, and they're learning, and they're failing, and they're celebrating the failings, and they're having successes. So that's one thing any tech leader can take away from this, is create quality champions whereby you empower someone to go off and learn and self-develop, and you ask them to come back and spread that within the QE community, which then gets spread back into the squads.
Right. But first you have to kind of show them the breadth of all that they can learn, all that they can, everything more that they can, or even more that they could be bringing to the table, right? You have to define what a champion can do.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a clear definition as to what our quality champions are, but more importantly, what they're not. So a quality champion, I wouldn't expect our performance quality champions to become hardcore experts in performance testing. What we're asking for them to do is go off and learn some basics so we can find showstoppers dead easy before we do that big load test in September, say, as an example. Our security champions, quality champions, help us find some real basic, easy gotchas with the security OWASP top 10 as an example, before we bring in the pen testers. These pen testers are really expensive, man. And they've been doing that for years and years. They're highly qualified. You don't want them coming in and finding obvious security bugs. You want them coming in and finding the bloody hard stuff to find, don't you? So this is the role of a quality champion, to just get au fait with a topic and bring that lovely learning back to the team and share it. Yes.
Right. Yeah, sorry. Like I mentioned before, I like to kind of let that thought sink in. I love that. I suppose it goes back also to, this being T-shaped, but I absolutely agree. You know, the stuff that is, for one profession, it might be the very basics of, for example, this, security testing, pen testing. For them, it might be the very basics, but for you, where it's not your main purview, it's like this extra value that you bring. So I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Now, we have another question coming in. Wanted to highlight it as we have like 5 minutes until this session is over. Like magically, I just blinked twice and here we are, So this question might be the second to last, I want to say, unless, we're going to have some more rolling in that we might want to address. So last call for questions. And here, Richard Smith is asking, in your opinion, should a test strategy exist for agile delivery? Or should we be expanding to quality strategy and define the many tools, activities, controls that could be undertaken by the team as a whole to help improve quality?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's another saying, quality approach. So before, I was calling it a test approach rather than a test strategy, simply because I think when you mention the word strategy to people that have come from the waterfall world, they tend to think back to a 50-page document that no one reads, right? So it's got a stigma attached to it. So I've changed to use the word approach, but in the essence of the question, Richard is spot on in changing it to be quality, because it changes the whole mindset then, doesn't it? Around, who should be involved in writing that approach, that strategy. The customer then all of a sudden appears, and how we're going to use the customer, when we're going to pull them in, when can they release people. I think Richard is spot on here to change it away from test strategy, and not just define tools, but define the activities, definitely the controls. I think the world is changing. The old documents of old have gone. And what's emerging now are people like Richard, forward-thinking people like Richard, who are now saying, no, there's a new document that needs to add value in a different way. And it's that end-to-end and not just looking at what the testers are doing. Because at the moment you put test approach, it's going to focus on, well, what are the test team doing? No. By changing it to quality strategy, which Richard has done, whoa, that's everyone, right? Because if quality is owned by the team, then all of a sudden we're going to say, well, what's the approach to unit checks? What's our branching strategy? How does quality build into our branching strategy? How are we going to get our customer involved and when? I think it's a great point by Richard. I really do. I love it.
Yeah, I like that too. And it does the exact same thing to my brain. It moves the accountability from, one area, from one group of people, the testers, to everyone. And I suppose that does kind of neatly summarize one of the main points that we were trying to make here with the session. And I do have to start saying things like that because we are almost out of time. Only just a few final questions. First of all, just to make sure that there isn't anything that you've been kind of holding back that I haven't unearthed in terms of, what tech leaders are doing wrong in terms of quality, which was the topic of our session. Was there anything else you wanted to mention, bring to the table that none of my questions really hit upon that you would still want to share with the Tech Leaders Hub audience?
I think it still rings true. Don't follow trends. Do what's right for your company for quality. The shift left, shift right is terminology that I've deliberately not used in this podcast because it might confuse people. But for those that are curious, shift left is everything we've been talking about. And this is what tech leaders should do. They should try and push as much quality and feedback loops and quality tasks to be earlier in the life cycle. And shift right for me, and this is a key one for tech leaders, shift right in my terminology is get your customer involved. Because guess what? Sometimes they're best placed to test. So we can create all the different environments. We can do all the testing internally as a squad, as a tech department. But guess what? We still can't predict how those goddamn users are going to use that software in that contact center, because they're all about speed, aren't they? If anybody's worked in a contact center, and I have, it's all about speed. It's all about how you whiz around the screens and how the screens are logically laid out. Okay, so if they're not involved in the beginning and throughout, you're missing a trick. So I think those are the things: shift left, shift right, put the customer at the heart of everything you do. I think that's what a lot of tech leaders fail to do. They don't put the customer at the middle of everything.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that and for adding that. Personally, I also don't quite love the terminology shift left and shift right, because the first time I saw it, it's one of those phrases where you actually have to learn it. There's no way to kind of glean it from the way it's phrased. It's just so I appreciate you kind of expanding on that and explaining that as part of the show, and I'm sure some of the listeners benefited from that. All right. So before I ask you if you have any announcements for the audience, because that's usually what happens towards the end, Leigh, I just spent around an hour listening to you and your thoughts on quality, all of which are hugely inspiring. My last question is, when is your book coming out, man?
Oh yeah. So I am writing a book. Seriously, it's capturing all my journey throughout tech, the 24 years in tech. Been writing it for about 2 years. I actually need to get myself in gear and actually finish it. But it is a book that will be controversial. It will be a book that will have key takeaways for anyone in tech. But there'll also hopefully be some funny stories in there to help break up what people think tech and testing is quite a dry subject. I'm hoping to inject a few tech stories that I've got just to lighten the mood. But I'm hoping to get it done in the next 12 months.
Amazing. First of all, we did not agree on this question beforehand. It was a shot in the dark, but I'm so glad it hit. Okay, great. Cool. Because I was just about to kind of encourage you to get on that. But yeah, maybe consider pair writing, for that too. And also, just the amount of stories you managed to share within this 1 hour, I think there's going to be plenty in the book itself. Can't wait to get my hands on that then when it's done. Right. So some people are saying thanks, highlighting the comments. Thomas is saying thanks. Jamie's saying great talk. Michael is saying cheers. Paulina is saying the speech was very inspirational. It was. Thank you. So now, before I let you go, you've got this audience and you've got their attention. Any announcements you would like to make, other than, I'm writing a book, which is a pretty big one, but anything you want to highlight in terms of, I don't know, hiring, direct them to your profiles, anything you would like to mention?
Yeah, Gear for Music, like all tech companies, we're constantly hiring. We're looking for QEs, we're looking for great developers, we're looking for delivery managers, all the roles across tech. If you go on Gear for Music web LinkedIn page, you'll see all the roles there.
Awesome. Right. Thanks for mentioning that. And since some people might be meeting, yes, Gear for Music. You're saying .com works or .co.uk? Both should work, right?
.com.
Yeah. .com. All right. So gearformusic.com. Go there. And as for us, just a second about STX. If you're meeting STX next for the first time, funny, you should mention developers, testers, but also designers. We're a software development company here in Poland, and we've attracted some of the best talent in Poland in terms of Python developers, JavaScript, React Native, machine learning, DevOps designers, and I could go on. So if any of you are thinking about a software project that you might want assistance with, we've been assisting since 2005, and we can assist you too. stxnext.com. Just reach out to us if you have a need like that. Right, and that's it for Tech Leaders Hub episode 14. Leigh, thank you so much. Matthew Harris is saying, great talk, great energy. I could not agree more. I'm so pumped after this, I won't be able to sleep. So thank you, Leigh, for being a guest on Tech Leaders Hub. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening live or the recording. We appreciate you all, and we will see you back for Tech Leaders Hub very, very soon. But for today, that would be all. So thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. And I'm going to click end broadcast now, sadly. Bye. See you next time.